So it turns out that new lenses are super expensive, perhaps the most expensive thing in photography at all, and everyone who spends like 5 minutes researching photography gear knows that already. However, there are some exceptions to that, and I want to talk about these exceptions in today's video. These are my 5 favorite and affordable lenses that I found over the years, so let's dive right in. Hello my friends and welcome to this video today. So I just want to quickly mention here that I ordered all these lenses from the most expensive to the cheapest one. As I said, in comparison to other lenses out there, all of them are pretty cheap, but that is the way I will do it in this video. Another thing is that all of these lenses, except for the last one, but you will see that in a second, are modern full frame lenses. So lenses for full frame cameras which have an autofocus built in. As I said, the last one is a little bit of an exception here, but the other lenses all have a modern feel to it, and all of these lenses are lenses that I have used. I don't have all of them here, some of them I sold again, but I used every single one of them, so I can really talk about them. One last thing before we start with the first lens is that all of these lenses are available from different manufacturers. For example, some of these lenses that I show you in this video are Sony lenses because I use a Sony system. However, pretty similar lenses are also available from different manufacturers, like for example Canon or Nikon, or, and this is the other case, that these are third-party lenses, and in this case they are obviously available for different systems and you can choose the one that you need. So let's get started now. So let's start with lens number 1, and I talk about a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And you can spend honestly pretty much for these things here, especially when you go with an f2.8 aperture or the newest model line of lenses, like for example from Sony they have the G Master 2nd generation lenses, and especially, as I said, with an f2.8 aperture they are really expensive. But this one especially here, it is honestly quite old, not this exact lens, but you know, the lens is built for a long time, and it also only has an f4 aperture. And this means that this lens is lighter and smaller than the f2.8, but it also means that it is a lot cheaper. And when we talk about the price, this one will set you back around $600 to $700 used, but in like new conditions from a certified dealer. You can get them even cheaper if you look on eBay, for example, but I always recommend going with a trusted dealership. So yeah, you have a warranty with it, which is always handy and quite important, I believe. This lens, the 70 to 200, is a super versatile lens. And some people maybe think they don't need it, for example, when you are into landscape photography, but this is not true. It is amazing for landscape photography. You can really zoom in a lot, and especially with modern cameras, they have a ton of megapixels, and so you can crop in later as well. So you can make a, like for example, 400 millimeter picture of your 200 millimeter shot, which is quite amazing, and you can do so much with it. And I really love this lens. I always bring it no matter where I go. It's not just great for landscapes, but obviously for nature photography as well, maybe even wildlife, and also for portraits, for example. So this is a super versatile lens. I absolutely love it, and I can definitely recommend getting one of these. Let's talk about lens number 2 now, and this is also a Sony lens in my case. This one here, it is a 24 to 105 millimeter lens, but equivalent lenses are available from Canon and Nikon as well. They are even a little bit cheaper because they are older than this one. However, this is quite a bargain for what you get. I bought this one used for around $500, and this is also the price that you will find it online, $500 to $600. And again, I bought this from a trusted dealership. You can get them even cheaper, but yeah, again, a great lens, an amazing deal, and it is even more versatile than the last lens. If I only had to buy one lens and use it for the rest of eternity, this one would be the lens for it, because the zoom range from 24 to 105 gives you basically everything. You can do wide-angled landscape shots, and on 105 millimeter you can even do something like wildlife. Not as good as with 200, 400 millimeter whatsoever, but again, it is possible, and I use this for everything. I use this for travel activities all of the time because I can just throw this one on in the morning and, you know, shoot with it the whole day, which is absolutely amazing. I love to do this, but I also use this, for example, for portrait and wedding shoots, which might sound a little bit counterintuitive because, you know, it only got an f4 aperture. However, The bokeh is not as smooth as with an f1.4 aperture, for example, this is for sure. However, I still believe this one performs great because most of the time you want to step down the aperture anyways. For example, if you have different objects or different people in your shot, you know, you want to have a little bit bigger focal plane where you have the stuff in focus that you want to have in focus. And in this case, most of the time I step my lenses down, so the f4 aperture isn't really a burden here. And as I said, it is a great deal. It is absolutely amazing. The image quality is great. It looks absolutely stunning. It also has a great built-in stabilizer. So for videos, this lens is also great. And I talked with a lot of videographers that use this very lens to this day because it's just so good at image stabilization. So this is also a big recommendation here. The next lens I want to talk about, I don't have here right now because I sold mine for a different lens. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that this lens isn't great, and I'm talking about the TT Artisan 75mm f2. This lens basically started out as, yeah, a secret tip. It's not as secret anymore, obviously, and I absolutely love this lens. The build quality of this lens is great. You have a metal casing, pretty good optics. The image quality is great from this lens, and the best part is it will only cost you around $200 to $220, which is basically, I wouldn't say for free, but nearly for free. It is an amazing lens, and I just love the 75mm aspect of this lens because it's something a little bit different. You know, everyone is so used to pictures taken with a 50mm lens. You know, the portrait shots with 50mm, they can look great, but 75mm gives you just a different feel to a photo, which can come in pretty handy. So I absolutely love this lens. And with the f2 aperture, you will get a beautiful blurry bokeh in the background. Obviously, there are faster lenses out there, like for example f1.4 or even f1.2 lenses, but they will cost you like 10 times as much. So yeah, when you compare it, this one is a no-brainer as well. And for example, when you just want to try out this focal range, basically, this lens is absolutely great. And yeah, I can definitely recommend getting one of these. You can even get them a little bit cheaper when you look at dealers that are shipping right from Asia, for example, from China. However, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. You will get problems like, for example, with the customs and stuff like that, and then you have to pay extra in the end. I don't know how this is in foreign countries. I'm from Germany, and you know, we will have some struggles if you try to import stuff like that, and in the end you will, you know, pay even more than if you would just buy it for like 220 bucks off Amazon. When you buy it from Asia, you can get it for around 160 bucks, and you have to decide that for yourself, obviously. Let's get to lens number 4 now, and this is an absolute classic. Everyone knows this lens and everyone loves this lens, I believe, and I'm talking about a 50mm f1.8 lens. And this is a thing that basically every manufacturer has one of these. You know, no matter if you buy from Sony, from Nikon, from Canon, I believe the other manufacturers as well, you will find a cheap 50mm f1.8 lens, and in most cases, basically in every case I believe, they are great. They will set you back around $100 to $150, depends on the age of the lens and the manufacturer, obviously, but these are prices for new lenses. You can get them even cheaper if you look on the used market, and this one is such a great, you know, beginner's lens. For example, you can try out, you know, portraits with it, and in most cases they are really sharp. They have a great optics built in. You know, when we talk about prime lenses, they generally speaking have a pretty good picture quality. So this is also a lens that I can definitely recommend for basically everything. I sold mine a couple of years back. I had it for like 10 years, and I still use it with my Sony camera. I had it for Canon actually, because back in the day I used Canon cameras before I switched to Sony. So I used it with an adapter on my Sony camera, and it still performed pretty good after all these years. Then I sold it eventually, but still, everyone who's looking for a cheap and reliable and great lens option, this one would be it. So yeah, just a great choice, and definitely can recommend it. Let's talk about the last lens now, and as I already mentioned in the beginning, this one is somewhat different than the others because it is more a category of lenses than a single lens itself, and I'm talking about analog vintage lenses. As I said, you see, this is nothing modern here. However, you can get amazing cheap deals on these. They are often basically for free when you buy an analog camera, and for me personally, I love analog photography, I love analog cameras, and I have a ton of these lenses laying around here because most of the time they are basically a gift when you buy an analog camera. You know, the people that sell them, they already have this lens laying around and they give it to you. But you can look at these dedicated lenses obviously as well on, for example, eBay, and they are super cheap. For example, I have one here. This is a Canon lens for the FD mount, the old Canon analog mount. Basically, it is an 50mm f1.4 lens, great bokeh, very wide aperture, and just a very, very good lens, honestly. The thing is, it's obviously not as sharp as modern lenses, that is for sure. But this lens cost me around 40 bucks, I believe, and they are even cheaper ones. For example, this one, it is from a manufacturer called Petri. I really didn't know this manufacturer until I got the camera from them. This one is also a 50mm lens, and if you look it up on eBay, I believe you can get one for 20 bucks. And these things, they are great for just playing around and trying out new things. You have to keep in mind two things with these lenses. First, they are manual lenses, so you will not have an autofocus, so you have to focus manually, obviously, which can be very fun and a great way to experience photography. And I love to do it sometimes, but not always. In some situations you will need an autofocus. I wouldn't necessarily choose a lens like this for shooting a, wedding, for example, where you have to take like 1000 photos of the ceremony in 10 minutes and every one of these photos should be in focus in best case scenario. So nothing for this. However, I still believe it is great to just try out new things. The second thing that you have to keep in mind is that you will need an adapter for your existing digital camera. The good part here is that these lenses, as they are manual, they don't require any, technical connection between the lens and the camera. So you basically can print them yourself if you have a 3D printer at home, or you can buy a cheap one off Amazon, for example, for a few bucks. I paid like between $10 and $40 for an adapter for my camera. So as I said, they are a fun way to explore. I made a video about this topic a few weeks back, so if you want to, you can check that out as well. And it's also really fun just acquiring these lenses, for example, give out a bid on eBay. Sometimes you can get them for an absolute bargain for a couple of bucks, honestly, if no one else bids on this lens. So this is just a fun way to explore photography in a different way, and definitely can recommend trying that out if you're into stuff like that. So here we are. These are my favorite 5 lenses that will not break the bank and will not set you back thousands of dollars. Let me know if you have some secret tips there that you can recommend to other people. As I said, there are a ton of great and cheap alternatives out there. And in this video, I just wanted to talk about lenses that I have used myself, which I found to be quite important, so I can give, a real statement about these lenses and give you somewhat of a value and not just, read like 10 different lenses that might be cheap off a piece of paper. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to leave a like and a comment, maybe even a subscription, and I have a ton of other videos about photography related topics over on my YouTube channel, so feel free to check them out as well if you want to. That would be amazing. But for now, I wish you a great day and I wish you a great week, and I hope I see you in next week's video. So see you then and goodbye.